Yeah, I have a couple questions I want to ask you as far as like podcast stuff goes, because I have. Do you want me to save big news for the end after we record, or do you want to talk about it now?
Why don't we just talk about it now?
Hello and welcome to the Moxstars podcast. I'm Evan Kunai, and I'm here with Christopher Ritter.
What's up?
Welcome to the show, everybody. You know what it is, the best podcast on the internet for Magic the Gathering and Dr. Pepper. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by finding us on YouTube, where you can like, subscribe, hit that bell for more notifications. Find us on all major podcasting platforms. Leave us a 5-star review. You can find us on our Discord community server. The link is down below in the description of the YouTube video. And you can also find us on Patreon, where you can become a supporter of the show. Huge shout out to all of our supporters who've been supporting us so far. It means so much to us. Thank you. You can become a $3 supporter tier, where you get the official Pepperhead roll. In our Discord server, your name turns Dr. Pepper Red. You get access to 2 exclusive channels. Today, we are covering something that wasn't quite revealed until after we recorded last week's episode. The 15th Doctor has arrived. And Ritter, I know you're excited about this. It's actually pretty sweet. I think that there's a lot of potential here, and the Discord server has been kind of going crazy about it. Like, Guy...
Yeah, Guy, as he is wont to do, I think, looks for food chain outlets. He's a known person. And in fact, you know what? He wasn't the one that talked about it in the spoiler channel. It was someone suggesting, "Hey, Guy, here's a food chain outlet." And it's the 15th Doctor. 2 colorless, 1 blue, 1 red, legendary creature, Time Lord Doctor. When the 15th Doctor enters the battlefield or attacks, mill 3 cards. You may put an artifact card with mana value 2 or 3 from among them into your hand. A lot of important artifacts at that mana value.
Yep.
The first non-artifact spell you cast each turn has Improvise. And for those unaware, like me, Improvise means your artifacts can help cast that spell. Each artifact you tap after you've done activating mana abilities pays for 1. Sort of like Convoke, but probably different in important ways and only applying to artifacts.
Yeah, and the thing is that it only contributes colorless, where Convoke can contribute from the color of the creature. So
is that the only rules wise how the rule plays out?
Pretty much. The big thing,
that seems like a waste to have a separate rule you have to learn.
Yeah. So it's not actually cleaner. I think it is one of the more balanced mechanics that they introduced when they. Gosh, I remember when Kaladesh came out and War of Invention was spoiled, and the world just went crazy. They're like, you can tap your artifacts to cast War of Invention, tutor out any artifact from your library. It's still a pretty heavily played card in the right strategy. So the improvise mechanic is not weak by any means.
It's a great mechanic. Totally.
And the thing is with this, and part of the conversation in the Brew Buddies was while this is a food chain outlet, it is notably that the cards that you have to find are ones that are triggered off of that ability. So you only have 3 shots, but with food chain, you're going to get your whole library milled into the graveyard. So you do get to see some they were talking about putting Trinisphere or Winter Orb or those staxy type of effects that are going to allow you to set up the conditions for you to win and for others to lose. So I would love to see a deck list on this, and I think that I'm sure Guy's working on a primer as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, you're in Izzet colors right now, and then you have any, with the Doctor's Companions, you can add any color to that. You can take it a Grixis direction. Definitely some Sultai potential.
Yeah, I think there's going to be, a large demographic of Magic players who weren't Doctor Who fans suddenly become Doctor Who fans because of all of these cards. That's going to pique their interest enough to go watch the new season of Doctor Who. which is great. I think this card is actually like super well balanced and is going to contribute largely to maybe not cEDH, but we have to give it a shot. That's the thing is it's going to contribute largely to
I mean, anything that has food chain potential, why not put it through? You have 80 of those cards already in the, out of the 99 figured out. Why not like goldfish it a little bit, see if it's a little better, a little worse, or a little more fun?
Totally. We were talking about that in the Shower Thoughts channel not too long ago. Was our food chain decks still viable? And the thing is that when food chain hits and it's allowed to resolve, it wins the game. It's just sometimes when you put a commander in, or when you play a particular commander, that the table is going to know just through experience that that is a food chain outlet, and it's likely what you're going for. So it's almost like telegraphing exactly what you're going to do before the game even starts.
But I mean, I don't know how true that is, because it's just like game knowledge does the same thing. Awareness of the meta does the same thing.
Totally.
It's very rare to be able to bluff with what your commander is going to do if you're playing a knowledgeable opponent.
There was just this weird era where people were taking Rhystic Study out of their decks because it was thought to be like maybe a little bit too well known, and people are known to pay their taxes, so they do it, and then the people were trying to find other card draw outlets or card draw, like opportunities or engines. And so turns out that was a bad idea. Like taking Rhystic Study out of your deck. Yeah, no, it's a great
card. Rhystic Study is one of the best cards you can play.
Exactly. So I think food chain is in this weird era right now where we're seeing a lot of new commanders that trigger or interact with food chain. So we're sort of like becoming numb to the idea of like, man, food chain is just so overplayed and blah this, blah that.
I mean, but like anything super powerful is going to have an Achilles heel. Like, totally. And if it has that weakness, like at the end of the day, it's still Achilles, and the weakness is still just the heel. Like it's food chain is still an insane card.
Totally. The thing is that I've tried running Teamer food chain in the past. It's hard to find without white in your color pool. Like will be the weakness of the 15th Doctor, is that in order to get food chain involved, you have to run a companion that has green, and there aren't any two-color companions that have green and white. And so you're in this weird zone of like, for whatever reason, the Academy Rector line just allows the combo to pop off that much easier. And having like Enlightened Tutor, having like, all these like outlets, or all these like pieces that allow you to tutor the food chain and get the pieces together, rely on having white or the ability to slow the game down with white cards like Dranth Magistrate or whatever. So it's going to be a challenge to see this deck like really flourish. I guarantee you it will be at a tournament. Like one of these Doctor decks will end up at tournament. I will play against it, and I will. Yeah, I mean, we saw
that. We saw that interest with the Lord of the Rings stuff. Like, if you look at tournament results, definitely all the big ones that people were like, this has potential. People wanted to take it to tournaments because they were like invested in the IP, and that's the same thing's going to happen with Doctor Who. But, plus you have the power level like is there.
Totally, and that's been a criticism of Magic sets in the past, is like, man, we only see like 1 or 2 cards for cEDH. It's like, no, now we're actually seeing like 7, 8, 9 like new cards, new viable cards that create a much more diverse meta. So it's
and I feel like that's not easy, but like that potential's there from a design standpoint, because the things that are going to be really good in cEDH like require things like food chain, for example, that aren't anywhere near standard or modern or any of the sets that they're primarily having to like design the bulk of the cards for.
Right. Now we'll see how these Doctors play in the meta and how they grow and develop. And well, even if they're at a casual table, I'm excited to play against them. And this whole Secret Lair drop, even though they are mechanically unique cards, and I don't necessarily like that strategy of marketing, I do think this is a great product for not only Doctor Who fans, but just fans of the game. So I'm excited to see more stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Today's main topic, we are talking deck tech about Ellivere of the Wild Court. It's such a good card. We've been hyping it up. It made our honorable mentions of our top 10 cards from 2023 for cEDH. And the thing is...
Yeah, I feel like we talk about it constantly.
Yeah, it's like one of those...
Both on the podcast and on the Discord, we talk about it constantly.
It's like the potential is there.
Well, we're putting our money where our mouths are, I guess.
We're going to see if it works.
Yeah.
The thing is that I've been playing a lot of Historic Brawl lately on Arena, and one of the decks that I decided to build was Sovereign Okinekahau, which I love the name. I love saying the name, and I love playing the deck because it's crazy. Okay, so if you haven't heard of Sovereign Okinekahau, 2 green, white, cat noble, legendary creature with ward 2. Whenever Sovereign Okinekahau attacks, for each creature you control with power greater than that creature's base power, but a number of +1/+1 counters on that creature equal to the difference. Notably, it is a 3/4. So you can play a lot of like weird synergies and like cards. And the thing is that in Historic Brawl, there aren't a whole lot of amazing cards that like we have in the larger card pool of cEDH that make it a top tier competitive deck. But we do have access to Ellivere, which if Ellivere is just crazy, and Okinekahau is going to be like the finisher for the deck, but Ellivere of the Wild Court stimulates the strategy because whenever Ellivere enters the battlefield or attacks, create a virtuous roll token attached to another target creature you control. If you control...
Yeah. Let's go a little wider before we dive in on Ellivere of the Wild Court, a card that we talked about a lot. Haven't actually read the role text on it yet. 2 colorless, 1 green, 1 white, so you're locked into Selesnya colors if you are building it as a commander. A legendary creature, Human Knight. When Ellivere of the Wild Court enters the battlefield or attacks, create a virtuous roll token attached to another target creature you control. And if you control another roll, virtuous roll, I'm not going to explain that right now because we're going to dive deep on that later. Second line of text, whenever an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And Ellivere is a 4/4. So, sorry about that, Evan. Let's proceed.
You're good.
Knowing what the card does.
Yes, huge thing. It's a 4/4 for 4 that says draw a card, and it enables itself. Yeah. It is an engine in and of itself. So
yeah, it's a little bit of a thicker Tymna almost.
Right. Yeah, that's with higher ceiling of potential. Well, not to say that, I guess, because Tymna is top tier attacking commander.
It does Tymna things, but clunkier.
Yes.
As well as being chunkier. Chunkier and clunkier Tymna.
Because you don't get access to all the colors in the world, the best colors, black and blue. So and or red. So it's limited in scope because of the color combination. So we're seeing... Well, this is where the challenge lies with this deck is how do we create an environment that allows us to control the pace of the game while drawing cards and getting us closer to the end goal. There are...
How do you stacks and win at the same time?
Yeah, right. And
which the other green-white stacks deck that you've seen competitively, Yasharn, has trouble with the winning part.
Yeah.
I think is what we're trying to correct, right?
Yes, it's getting there. It's like you can definitely hold your opponents down for a little while, but then it just gets to a point where they get enough card advantage, they pick up a Cyclonic Rift, and then they just push your board back to your hand and they win through some sort of like combo Underworld Breach, Thassa's Oracle. Something like that happens because they were given enough time to strategize.
Yeah, Cyclonic Rift is an excellent card. It wrecks any strategy that relies on having permanents in play, especially a stacks-based strategy that's going to rely on having a lot of permanents in play. It's just a bottom line good card, but this strategy, especially weak to Rift.
Yes. So just to get started on this, we know that a lot of the best stacks pieces stapled to creatures exist in these colors. We've seen Esper Sentinel, like just to run through a few of them. Esper Sentinel, a new one, Charismatic Conqueror. It's a 2/2 with Vigilance, Vampire Soldier for 1 and a white. Whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. If they don't, you create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. That's an amazing card. And it's been...
That's an amazing card. You are, it seems like, playing it over a card that I think you should be including. It does something similar, which is Manglehorn.
Ooh, that is a good... You are so right, because the big thing with green and white is it struggles to keep pace with artifact-based ramp, either via Dockside or Mana Crypts or whatever. So we are playing... So Ritter and I have been discussing this deck list for the past few days, and sort of like today we're going to iron out the last 5 slots of the deck. We are playing Chrome Mox, Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, Mox Diamond, Mana Vault, Soul Ring.
You got to play some of the fast mana.
You do.
No matter what. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's the only way that we're going to get to an Ellivere on turn 1 or turn 2.
Exactly. Like with the 4 CMC commander, like we cannot pass up having Jeweled Lotus in this deck.
Correct. Yeah. So it's absolutely necessary. While we are going to be playing Stony Silence and Null Rod, we are just going to take a gamble. Like, even if you have to turbo out to get those pieces down, it stops a turn 2 win most of the time. Like, even if you turn off your own Mox Diamond or whatever, it's oftentimes for the better for you to control the pace of the game early and get yourself set up so that you can keep rolling.
Yeah, I mean, this deck and Selesnya decks in general aren't gonna ramp up right away and present a threat right away. Like in a stack strategy, like you want to slow the game down immediately, and especially with a chunky commander that you have to get down fast. Like that's vital that you start slowing it down turn 1, turn 2, if possible.
Totally. And a couple other, I do agree. I think that right now, at this moment, I'm going to type Manglehorn and put it in the list. It's just too good not to play. And you're right. When it enters battlefield...
What about Collector Oof?
Now,
also,
that's what I was going to ask you, is there are a few things that I've included in this list that are questionable. Like Heliod Suncrowned is a great enchantment creature. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature you control, and then you can give a creature lifelink until end of turn. The thing is that the reason I wanted to include it is because we can use Walking Ballista, but if we're diving too heavily into this whole like shut artifacts off strategy, how often do we run into the problem of not being able to win the game because we're stopping ourselves from winning the game?
Looking at this list, I mean, really the artifacts you want are the fast mana. We're also running Curse Totem and Null Rod.
Yep.
Which don't have activated abilities that would be interfered with by Collector Oof. I think the mana in here doesn't really exist to ramp past getting the commander down early. I think it's something that we want to do, and it's an effect that we want, I think.
For sure. All right. Collector Oof, that was actually something I wanted to ask you about, because I was just unsure how heavily did we want to lean into this, like shut all artifacts off, because there's one thing that happens in a game, and I watched it on Play to Win just this last week when they had the nitpicking nerds on, was that I think one of them played an Aven Mind Sensor early on because someone had triggered the option to search their library, right? And in doing so and not waiting, they didn't allow the other 2 players at the table to be able to grow or develop or interact with the other decks. So that's one thing that you have to realize, that when you're playing stacks, you have to be responsible. So dropping a collector...
I think this deck is single-minded in how it wants to do stacks. Like, if you're looking at Ellivere and the way you're going to build around it, this deck straight up just wants to put a hard lock on doing anything in this game. Yeah. Like, in the entire game that you can do, put a hard lock on it, except for combat.
Absolutely.
Everything except for combat. Like
And
it has tunnel vision. Like, because what Ellivere wants to do, like, we're putting all the pieces in here that's going to stacks out the game, and then what Ellivere wants to do, how it's going to close out games, is just making real fat creatures and just going to combat and swinging those creatures. Like, that's how you're drawing cards. That's how you're, fattening up your creatures, putting those +1/+1 counters on there. That's what it wants to do, and that's how it's going to, like, be effective. And because it's going to be so effective at that, so like any type of stack strategy that you can play through creatures is going to be viable, I think.
yeah, and that's ultimately why these creature-based stacks are so good. So the virtuous roll, I don't know if we described it already, but the enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. So having Heliod in here as another like +1/+1 towards the whole thing is great. I love that. But it also, like, it's basically just a base +1/+1, and then each virtuous roll that you put out there onto the battlefield onto another creature, it's +2/+2, +3/+3, +4/+4. So it like sort of can snowball out of control, and these can be far more deadly than I think people are going to realize. And you might be able to get away with it a few times, but it's a good thing you only play one game before moving on to the next round and seeing other players, because they'll interact with you more heavily if they see what's going to happen when you swing in and punch them in their face with a 6/6 collector.
You're not necessarily going with a Voltron strategy. Like, the nice thing is it has resilience against like game 2 and game 3.
Yeah,
because like you can go wide with any of your creatures just by the nature of how Ellivere builds.
Right. So
so your Spirit of Labyrinth might be the creature that's closing out the game.
Yeah. Thing is, I didn't put Spirit of the Labyrinth in the list because it limits us from drawing cards. What do you think about that?
Well, that was a bad example. Let's say Dauntless Dismantler.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
So the deck list has 3 mana dorks. I think they're just the 3 that are good enough to warrant playing.
Which 3 are we playing?
Avacyn's Pilgrim, Birds of Paradise, Delighted Halfling.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean,
well, there's one more mana dork, but it's a 2-drop.
What about Generous Ent? I think Generous Ent is excellent. It's not really a mana dork, but it has force cycling for 1 basic, and then it's a 5/7 body at the end of the game.
Let me see here. Generous Ent, yeah. It's 6 mana, 5/7 reach. When Generous Ent enters the battlefield, create a food token, but force cycling for 1. Honestly, I'm not mad at that because I think these forest cycling, mountain cycling, whatever, plane cycling from the Lord of the Rings set are totally viable because they tutor out a Savannah, a Temple Garden. They help you color fix. And on turn 1, this isn't the worst play in the world because it replaces itself and guarantees you like another card or another land. You're going to be able to hit that land. And so I'm not mad at that. I put it in the list just as a placeholder right now. We'll figure out towards the end of this whether or not we want to keep it. But I'm also playing Sanctum Weaver because why not? It's literally, we're talking about an enchantment-based strategy with every virtuous roll. This is an enchantment, so it's going to make every virtuous roll that much bigger, and it's going to tap for that much more mana.
Hey, you want to do the opposite of ramping? There's a artifact that I think we should be including, Thorn of Amethyst. That's relevant.
Ooh, because
spells cost 1 more to cast.
We are currently at 30 creatures. So this isn't actually the worst include in the world either, just to like keep people off certain strategies. Like I think this keeps a lot of players off of Underworld Breach by making Lion's Eye Diamond actually cost something. So I love it. I'm cool with that. I love Thorn of Amethyst. So a couple other stacks pieces, creature base that we're playing. Obviously, if you're in white, you're playing Drannith Magistrate. We have Dauntless Dismantler, new from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Artifacts your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped, and then it can also sacrifice itself to destroy each pay XX in a white, destroy each artifact with mana value X. Very good. So good. Yeah, it's unbelievable. I'm not sure if this is considered a stacks piece, but more of an enabler. But we're also playing Destiny Spinner, an enchantment creature, human creature and enchantment spells you control can't be countered. You can also pay 4 mana, Target land you control becomes an XX elemental creature with trample and haste until end of turn, where X is the number of enchantments you control. That can actually be relevant and help you close out a game here with this type of strategy.
We're heavy on the enchantment strategy. I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah, so if you activate it in your main phase or before you declare attackers, Ellivere just wants an attack trigger. So the land will be there. Obviously, the Virtuous Roll will fall off as it no longer is a creature at the end of turn, but it's just enough for you to get through, because I think we were talking earlier, like, how important is trample? It's really important. It's actually nutty.
Yeah, getting that damage through is huge.
Yeah, so I think Destiny Spinner has multiple utility purposes here that's going to help us close out games. Going up in mana value, we're going up to our 3 drops. We have Archon of Emeria, awesome Rule of Law effect that also will stifle your opponents from putting non-basic lands on the battlefield. They enter tapped. It's also a flyer. Notably, putting a Virtuous Roll on this basically is going to be a free swing.
Yeah.
Yes, every
Love
time. Evasion is crazy in here. Same with Aven Mind Sensor. Having flash and flying is going to be able to catch your opponents off guard, nullifying essentially any tutor, making it a very low percentage chance that they actually get what they need. Eidolon of Rhetoric contributing to the Virtuous Roll count. And then I'm playing an enabler here that I was playing in Shalai Halar. It's Calyx, Guided by Fate. Legendary enchantment creature. It's a 3-drop, 1 a green and a white. Human druid. Whenever Calyx, Guided by Fate, or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. When Calyx or an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may create a token that's a copy of a non-legendary enchantment you control. Do this only once each turn. Doesn't that just do everything?
Huge upside. I think it's great in this deck, especially with the enchantment package.
Yeah, whenever Ellivere attacks, it's creating an enchantment. Whether or not you put it on a creature that already has a roll, you're still going to be able to, that roll goes away. You still put a +1/+1 counter on something. So absolutely nutty. I think this is going to be huge, and it's going to draw a lot of red flags when people see it hit the battlefield. We are playing Elvish Spirit Guide. Questionable Heliod Sun Crowned.
I wouldn't pursue that avenue. And I think a card at 3 CMC that you should be playing that you're not playing is Ranger Captain of Eos.
Oh, 100%.
It's a auto include in white. So
no, that was just a goof. It's such an automatic include and staple that I think it just like slipped my mind. Like, hey, that's automatically going to be in there. So.
Also at 3 CMC, worth considering a Skyclave Apparition.
Ooh, that is a good one. Just being able to exile anything pretty much unconditionally. It's 4 mana or less.
Yeah, 4 CMC or less, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a great card, and especially in a creature-based stack strategy, it's a great removal piece. I mean, you have Lapse of Certainty in your list, which is not going to make the final cut.
I think we need interaction on the stack, which is why I included it.
Yeah, man, Reprieve is the better version of that if you're going to play it.
You think so? I was just wondering if like slowing your opponents down and keeping them from like pushing something back.
No, Lapse
to
of
their
Certainty
hand.
is a bad card.
It's
a straight bad card. And Reprieve, maybe you can have a discussion about, but if you're going to play one of those effects, it should be Reprieve.
Yeah, I just think that Lapse of Certainty can save you for a full turn cycle where Reprieve.
But so can Ranger Captain, Silence, and things like that.
Totally.
Play more of those effects, maybe. Oh, by the way, we're not playing. You're not playing Grand Abolisher yet. I know we have that covered with Kutsil, but it's worth playing 2 versions of the effect.
Yeah, keep people from interacting with us.
Yep.
It's in the list. There we go. I love Grand Abolisher. It's another one of those cards where it's like automatic, and I was just dumb to not put it in there right away.
I got 2 more for you.
Yeah, hit me.
Both Thalias.
Ooh.
Mention Thorn of Amethyst. You got that on a creature body. And then Thalia also does the tapping.
Heretic Cathar.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are great includes because let's get that Heliod out of there because I think these actually help us more. Boom. Yeah, the Guardian of Thraben, easy, first strike. imagine putting a virtuous roll on that. It's a 3/2 first strike that's just going to be hard to deal with, and then all of a sudden, oh man, it's an 8/7. You know, like it's going to require blocks, and it's just going to get harder and harder to remove. I love that. Okay, so another few cards that we put in. I wanted to include this because it's been a house in the Brawl deck that I've been playing. It's Kodama of the West Tree. Now,
I love that. It just puts more of your permanents in play.
Yeah,
it's great. It
allows you to basically. It's going to be, if it does what it needs to do. So,
I was thinking of the East Tree. No. West Tree. Why don't you continue explaining? Sorry.
So this is Kamigawa. This is from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. 2 and a green, Kodama of the West Tree. A 3/3 with reach. Modified creatures you control have trample. Whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Now, note that modified creatures are creatures with counters, auras, and equipments attached.
So
to
your
them.
virtuous roll tokens are going to do it.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So it makes them modified and it gives them trample. So you're not wrong that this is going to put more of our permanents onto the battlefield.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Because,
in a different way.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to thin the deck, because what we can do is we can layer the triggers for when this hits. We can actually increase the chances of having more value in our card draw by, let's say we hit with 3, right? I'm playing 16 basic lands. Mm-hmm. So, or 14 basic lands. So there's definitely plenty that's going to be able to be searched out. And by doing so, you're basically just like increasing your chances of drawing valuable cards like Kutsil, Malamet Exemplar, new card from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, 3 mana, Cat Warrior. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Like you were saying, that Grand Abolisher type effect. Whenever one or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. It's just another Ellivere in the 99, which is, hot.
Yeah, very hot, yeah.
All right. Another card that I don't know if this will make the cut, because we talked about having a lot of card draw. Like, I know that Bowmasters is obviously a very good card, but Citizen Champion does everything you would want and hope out of an enchantment-based strategy.
2 colorless, 1 green, human warrior. It's 1/3, has constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, such as the virtuous roll token or anything else from the enchantment package we've got in this deck, whenever that happens, put a +1/+1 counter on Citizen Champion and draw a card. Yeah, I know. I love that. Yeah, I honestly feel like what happens with a lot of Stax decks is that they can't keep up with the blue card draw options, and they just sort of peter out, like beyond their ability to put that lock on the game. So what I think we want in this deck is every redundant piece of card draw, and I think this one's great. I think it's going to be drawing cards when the deck is doing what the cards already when the deck is doing what the deck already wants to do.
Yeah, there's there's not a lot of enchantment-based card draw options. Let's say there is Argothian Enchantress whenever you cast an enchantment. Thing is, we're not casting. And then the only other card that says draw a card when an enchantment enters is Eidolon of Blossoms. But for 4 mana, that's just a little out of reach. While it is an enchantment creature and does add to the virtuous roll count, this is just far more effective and actually punches like crazy. So we're going to go to the top end right away. We have Linvala, Keeper of Secrets, just to kind of shut off those creature-based activated abilities.
Yeah, if we had access to black, we'd be playing Draina and Linvala, but Linvala by herself, just as good in this deck.
And a flyer. Amazing. We have Sovereign Okaneka How, because of the count of the virtuous roll. You put 1 on, It's +1/+1 already. You have this on the battlefield, it swings, you're getting +2/+2 because of the counter. Likely, the virtuous roll is going to add +4/+4 and on and on and on. So this is going to take it to the next level. It's a finisher in this deck for a reason.
I see that.
Yeah.
Toski, more card draw.
Yep. We have Yasharn here. just keeping people off treasures and fetch lands. That's why I'm running so many basics and not so many fetches, is because or Mana Confluence, is because this card has bitten me in the ass enough that I know how to play with it and around it.
Well, luckily it's not the commander, and it's not a card that you're going to see all the time. You're more going to have the choice to get it out.
Yep. Ashaya Soul of the Wild is Cyclonic Rift protection. I've seen it enough times where, one, it's going to get huge. Two, it allows you to generate more mana. It's amazing.
Have you considered at 5 CMC for more card draw, Orin Frostfang?
I did. I didn't know how valuable Death Touch was going to be, especially since we were playing Citizen Champion, and Toski's indestructible. So I wasn't quite sure, because it seems like a rate that's just a little too high. Especially
that's fair. I mean, you have
is...
Garruk's Uprising in there and other things in the enchantment package
that
there might be enough card draw. I mean, you can never have too much card draw, but there might be enough card draw. Might not need the Orin Frostfang.
Yeah, and we got Mommy as well. Such a good card. We're playing Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider. Now, this card is a really good stacks piece that I think people are a little undervaluing a little bit. It's a 6/6 trample haste. Whenever you would put one or more counters, you double that amount, and whenever your opponents would put a counter, they put half that many rounded down. So,
I never really considered it a stacks piece, but that second ability can be staxy.
Yeah, it makes it so that it turns off the One Ring, so they get like one tap.
Oh yeah, no, I love that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's great there, and it also allows all their planeswalkers come in with half the amount. And there are so many combos with planeswalkers that Teferi, like 3 fairy, can't activate to bounce Vorinclex when it enters the battlefield. So
okay. Yeah, no, I can see that. I would maybe not run Grand Cenobite. I know it fulfills. You were talking about the Living Plane combo, which I don't think we're going to pursue, right?
Right. Yeah, we're not going to pursue that. And
it does function as a board wipe. I mean, it's a potential cut. I could also see it staying in there.
Yeah, it's just very it's oftentimes more oppressive than, it's an older card, so we don't see it very often, but it is oppressive in its own way.
It's an older card, but it checks out, sir.
Yeah. So that's our creature-based package. We don't want to go on, and we might continue and do another episode on this and dive a little bit deeper.
With the finished deck list,
Give us your...
to the...
Oh, go ahead, dude.
I was petering out.
Oh. Yeah. I'm sorry I cut you off. Oh, yeah. Just be sure to give us your thoughts in the comments below on the YouTube channel, or you can reach out to us on the Discord server in Brew Buddies. We'll put this list up there. There is so much more to talk about. We just got to wrap up, and
you know what? I do have to be responsible. I'm looking at this deck list in real time. You still have the Lapse of Certainty in there. Can you move the Lapse of Certainty to considering and maybe put Soul Partition in place of it?
Oh, okay. You're killing me. All right.
I mean, gotta play Soul Partition at a minimum.
You do.
That is an obvious cut for it.
Yeah, there are so many little things to work out with this deck that I want to, we're gonna have to put in, 20 reps before we really see what is working and what's not working. So I'm excited for this. This is actually one of the decks that I think we both see the potential in, and so
yeah, it's something we've talked about a lot. It's time to finally get the reps in and prove it.
Totally. I will go through and refine and get us back down to 100. All of your suggestions, Ritter, were on point and money.
Yeah. Speaking of suggestions, one that I made off air that you included in the deck list before we started talking about it was Clever Concealment. That I feel like we should talk about real quick, because I think people are going to look at that and be like, hey, that's not a cEDH card. Why is that in there? We need more Psych Rift protection. That's my devil's advocate for Clever Concealment. Definitely let's talk about it in Brew Buddies more. But I think unless we're really hard to get to that 100 and we got to make a cut, Clever Concealment should be in there.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. That's a big thing, is as Convoke, so you can put something out there that doesn't have haste or whatever, and it still can contribute to that count, and you can save your board state and potentially come back around on the following turn and punch that Psych Rift player right back in the jaw. So I am, God, I'm stoked to see a greater Auramancy pop off with this deck.
Hey, oh man, I know I said we have to wrap up, and I keep extending it. Got to get Endurance in there, I think.
Ooh, that's a good one too. Reach is
and maybe Solemnity or Solitude, whichever the
Solitude
the
for
white
the
evoke is.
exile.
At least consider it. Let's at least get those in the consideration.
Yeah, I think it's interaction that's free, and a lot of times honestly,
The right price is free.
Yeah, we praise Drannith Magistrate, but a lot of times we really need to get rid of a Drannith, and we won't oftentimes have that removal. So I'm all for all of those. All right, dude. All right. That is a good suggestion.
Let's actually wrap up.
Yeah, let's actually wrap up. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by finding us on YouTube, where you can like, subscribe, hit that bell for more notifications, and you can find us on all major podcasting platforms. Give us a 5-star review so we look super duper cool. You can join our Discord community server where we're talking about this stuff. We're talking about all of these great new cards, new mechanics. We sort of like rewinding the clock and going back and maybe seeing things that we might have missed before. So this is one of those decks where we want to get to it before it slips away. And you can also support the show on Patreon by becoming a supporter. For $3 a month, you get the Pepperhead roll on our Discord community server, where your name turns Dr. Pepper red, and you get access to 2 exclusive channels, Shower Thoughts and the Dr. Pepper channel. And I think we really kicked some ass today, Ritter.
I think so too, man. Looking at this deck list, now that it's kind of come together, and you got that fucking trash card Lapse of Certainty,
dude,
out of there.
It gets rid. It stops a Psych Rift.
Now that we're there, I'm actually kind of super excited about this deck.
That was the thing standing in your way.
Yeah, I had a Lapse of Certainty about this deck. Quite frankly, now that it's gone,
the artwork
I can
is
see
stellar.
With clear eyes, and now I'm into it.
Yeah, could you imagine lapsing someone who thought they were going to get away with an overloaded Cyclonic Rift? They see that
Honestly,
artwork.
If anyone had Lapse of Certainty played against them, they wouldn't see it coming, and they would be absolutely enraged.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a troll slot in the 99, but if there is, Lapse of Certainty is certainly the card for it.
Yep. Well, all right. Let's get out of here, Ritter.
All right, man.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. Bye-bye.
Bye.